The sky was a bruised purple, streaked with black smoke and the flickering glow of distant explosions. The ground beneath Private Aiden Carter's boots was soaked with mud, blood, and shattered fragments of a world he once called home. The war had dragged on for 5 relentless years, and with every passing hour, the front lines shifted like restless ghosts. Victory seemed like an illusion. Survival was the only real prize. Aiden clutched the letter in his pocket, the last letter from his sister, Emma. He had read it so many times that the ink was fading and the paper felt fragile, like the very concept of peace. Come home soon, Aiden. We miss you. I pray every night for your safety. Her words were the only thing that kept him going. The rain hammered down mercilessly as the unit moved through the shattered remains of what used to be a village. Houses were reduced to rubble, trees stood like charred skeletons, and the only sound besides the rain was the distant rumble of artillery. Stay sharp, Sergeant Holloway murmured, his voice grim. Enemy patrols have been spotted nearby. Aiden adjusted his helmet, his fingers trembling not from fear, but exhaustion. The war had hollowed him out. The boy who once dreamed of being a teacher, who used to play football in the fields of his hometown, was gone. In his place was a soldier forged in fire and sorrow. The mission was simple: recon the area, gather intel, and fall back. But Aiden knew all too well that simple didn't exist in war. As the squad advanced, Aiden's mind drifted back to the night before he left home. Emma had hugged him tightly, refusing to let go. His mother's eyes were full of silent tears, and his father, a man of few words, had simply placed a hand on his shoulder. Come back, Emma had whispered. The memory burned in his heart as gunfire suddenly erupted. Ambush, someone screamed. Chaos. Bullets tore through the air, the sharp crack of rifles mixed with the thunder of explosives. Aiden hit the ground, heart pounding, as dirt and shrapnel sprayed around him. He returned fire blindly, the figures of enemy soldiers flickering through the smoke like wraiths. One by one his comrades fell, some screaming, some silent.
The sergeant was hit in the chest.
Aiden crawled toward him, dragging him behind the cover of a half-collapsed wall. Hold on, Aiden shouted, trying to stop the bleeding. But Holloway's eyes were already glassy. His lips moved, barely a whisper. Run. Aiden froze for a split second before instinct took over. He grabbed his rifle and sprinted through the maze of destruction. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Hours passed. The rain lessened to a drizzle, but the cold cut to the bone. Aiden found shelter in what remained of an old church. The stained glass windows were shattered, the wooden pews splintered and burned. He sank to his knees, soaked and shivering. He pulled the letter from his pocket, unfolding it with numb fingers. I know you're scared, but you're brave. You always have been. Come home. His lips trembled. He closed his eyes, allowing himself, just for a moment, to imagine the warmth of his sister's smile, the way his mother used to hum while cooking dinner, the simple joy of a life before the war. The sound of footsteps snapped him back to reality. He raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. A figure emerged from the shadows, unarmed, hands raised. The uniform was different. Enemy. But the soldier, no older than 19, looked just as terrified as Aiden felt. They stared at each other, breath misting in the cold air. Time seemed to freeze. Aiden's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at him to shoot. The enemy. The cause. The war. But then he looked into the young man's eyes. They were the same as his. Haunted, broken, human. The enemy slowly knelt, placing his hands on the ground, showing submission. He spoke softly in a language Aiden barely understood, but the message was clear.
I don't want to die.
Lowering his rifle, Aiden exhaled a shaky breath. The boy began to cry, soft, broken sobs. Aiden sat down opposite him, exhaustion overtaking fear. For the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him, something fragile. Compassion. Humanity. They sat in silence, two soldiers from opposite sides of a senseless war, beneath the ruins of a church. The enemy offered a small scrap of bread from his pocket. Aiden accepted it with a nod. They were just two boys, far from home, trapped in the machinery of death. The next morning, they parted ways without words. Aiden continued toward his extraction point, half expecting a bullet in the back. But none came. As he trudged through the devastated countryside, he clung to the memory of that moment in the church. Not all enemies were monsters. Not all wars needed to end in blood. Days blurred together as Aiden's unit regrouped. Reinforcements arrived, and the offensive pushed forward. Yet something inside Aiden had shifted. He fought not for glory, nor hatred, but for survival, and for the hope that one day there could be an end to all this. One evening, under the dim light of a flickering oil lamp, Aiden finally wrote back to Emma, "I'm still here. I don't know how, but I'm still standing. War changes people, Em. I don't know if I'll ever be the same again, but I promise you, I'm coming home." Months later, the war finally ended. Aiden stepped off the train onto the platform of his hometown station. His uniform hung loosely on his gaunt frame, his eyes older than his years. But he was alive. Emma was there, waiting. She ran to him, tears streaming down her face as she threw her arms around him. "You came back," she whispered. He held her tightly, breathing in the scent of home. The nightmare was over. But deep inside, he knew the war would never truly leave him. The ghosts would remain. The faces of the fallen would visit him in dreams. Yet, for the first time in years, there was hope. A future. And in his pocket, folded and worn, he still carried her letter. The last letter that had kept him alive when all else seemed lost.